Before there was Mystery Men or The Tick, there was Blankman, a superhero comedy so bizarre that it featured a washing machine robot, real sons playing flashback versions of their famous fathers, and a $30 million budget that somehow vanished faster than the hero's dignity. From Damon Wayans predicting his own movie in another film to the strangest casting choices in superhero cinema history, this forgotten 1,994 gem hides secrets weirder than its bulletproof underwear costume. Fact 1. Real family acting dynasty. When Damon Wayans decided to cast the younger versions of the main characters in Blankman, he made a choice that would turn the 1994 superhero comedy into a genuine family production. Instead of hiring random child actors through traditional casting calls, Wayans gave the flashback roles to his own sons, creating one of the most authentic family connections ever seen in a Hollywood film. Michael Wayans took on the role of young Daryl, the character who would grow up to become the bumbling superhero Blankman, while 11-year-old Damon Wayans Jr. played young Kevin, the skeptical brother who eventually becomes the sidekick known as Other Guy. This casting decision meant that when audiences watched the childhood scenes of the Walker brothers, they were literally seeing the real-life sons of the actors who played their adult versions. The choice was particularly meaningful for Damon Wayans Jr., who was making his very first appearance in any film at just 11 years old. Born in November of 1982 in Vermont, the young actor was still discovering his own path in life when his father offered him this opportunity to step into the family business. The experience of working alongside his father and brother on a major Columbia Pictures production gave him his first taste of the entertainment industry that would eventually become his career. What makes this family casting even more remarkable is how natural and convincing the resemblance appears on screen. The young actors genuinely captured the essence and mannerisms of their older counterparts, creating a believable continuity that most films struggle to achieve with unrelated actors. This wasn't just a case of nepotism or convenience, but rather a creative decision that added an extra layer of authenticity to the film's family dynamics. The Wayans family was already well established in comedy through their work on In Living Color, but Blankman marked one of the first times multiple generations appeared together in a feature film, setting a precedent for future family collaborations in their entertainment legacy. Fact 2. Box office catastrophe extraordinaire. The financial failure of Blankman stands as one of the most spectacular disasters in superhero movie history, with numbers so shocking that they still serve as a cautionary tale for Hollywood studios today. Columbia Pictures invested an enormous $30 million into the production, which was considered a substantial budget for a comedy film in 1994, especially one featuring a relatively untested superhero concept. When Blankman hit theaters on August 19, 1994, the opening weekend results were immediately devastating. The film managed to earn only $3.7 million during its first 3 days, which represented nearly half of what the movie would make during its entire theatrical run. This opening performance was so poor that it immediately signaled to industry insiders that the film was headed for disaster. By the time Blankman finished its complete theatrical run, the worldwide box office total reached just $7.9 million. This meant that Columbia Pictures lost more than $22 million on the project, making it one of the most expensive flops of the year. The film's performance was so catastrophic that it earned less than 1/4 of its production budget, not even accounting for the additional millions spent on marketing and distribution. The failure was particularly painful because 1994 was actually a strong year for superhero and comedy films. Movies like The Mask starring Jim Carrey were earning hundreds of millions of dollars, proving that audiences were hungry for superhero entertainment when it was executed properly. Even other Wayans family projects had found success in previous years, making Blankman's failure all the more surprising to industry observers. Critics were equally harsh, with the San Francisco Chronicle's reviewer famously opening his review by stating that the title should be warning enough, declaring there was nothing there. This combination of critical rejection and audience indifference created a perfect storm that turned what should have been a career-boosting vehicle into a major setback. Fact 3. J5 Robot was Johnny Five parody. One of the most charming characters in Blankman wasn't actually human at all, but rather a homemade robot named J5 that served as both the hero's loyal companion and an obvious tribute to one of the most beloved robots in movie history. The filmmakers deliberately created J5 as a direct parody of Johnny Five, the sentient military robot from the 1986 hit film Short Circuit, but with a distinctly low-budget and homemade twist that perfectly matched Blankman's do-it-yourself superhero aesthetic. While Johnny Five was a sophisticated military prototype worth millions of dollars, J5 was constructed entirely from Daryl Walker's grandmother's old household appliances, with her vintage washing machine serving as the main body. The robot featured flashlights for eyes, wore a Detroit Tigers baseball cap as his signature headpiece, and had a blue pom-pom attached to what could generously be called his head, creating a charmingly ramshackle appearance that was both endearing and completely ridiculous. The similarities between the two robots went far beyond their names, as J5 displayed many of the same personality traits and behavioral quirks that made Johnny 5 so memorable to audiences. Both robots possessed a childlike curiosity about the world around them, demonstrated loyalty to their human companions, and had the ability to recognize faces and voices while showing signs of genuine artificial intelligence. J5 could even be programmed to run specialized software by inserting cassette tapes, and Daryl had somehow managed to turn him into a functional vending machine for snacks and drinks. The parody was so intentional that the connection is explicitly acknowledged in movie databases and trivia collections, with Short Circuit's own reference materials noting that J5 serves as a deliberate homage. This creative choice allowed Blankman to tap into the audience's existing affection for friendly robots, while maintaining the film's overall theme of making superhero gadgets from everyday household items and junk. Fact 4. Greg Kinnear's secret film debut. Long before Greg Kinnear became a household name through romantic comedies and Oscar-nominated dramatic performances, he made his very first appearance in a feature film through a small but memorable role in Blankman that most people never realized existed. In 1994, Kinnear was primarily known to television audiences as the charming host of Talk Soup on the EWWTEF Entertainment Television Network, where he had built a reputation for his witty commentary on daytime television and pop culture. When the producers of Blankman needed someone to play a talk show host in the film, casting Kinnear was a natural choice that allowed him to essentially play a version of himself while making the transition from television hosting to acting. His appearance in the movie was brief but significant, as it represented his first step into the world of feature films that would eventually lead to starring roles in major Hollywood productions. At the time of filming, Kinnear had no way of knowing that this small role in a superhero comedy would be the beginning of a successful acting career that would span decades. He was simply a television personality taking on what seemed like a minor acting job, probably never imagining that he would eventually earn an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor in As Good as It Gets just 3 years later in 1997. The irony of Kinnear's film debut is particularly striking when you consider that Blankman was widely considered a failure both critically and commercially, while Kinnear went on to become one of Hollywood's most reliable and respected actors. His subsequent career included starring roles in beloved films like You've Got Mail, Little Miss Sunshine, and The Matador, proving that sometimes the most unlikely beginnings can lead to remarkable success. This hidden connection makes Blankman an unexpected footnote in the career of an actor who would go on to work with some of the biggest names in Hollywood. Fact 5. Geographic Identity Crisis Mystery. The filmmakers of Blankman created one of the most confusing fictional cities in movie history by deliberately mixing visual clues from different real American locations, making it nearly impossible for viewers to figure out exactly where the story takes place. This geographic puzzle wasn't an accident or oversight by the production team, but rather an intentional creative choice that adds to the film's surreal and comic book-like atmosphere. The most obvious clue pointing to Chicago appears during Mayor Harris's television announcement about the First City Bank, where careful viewers can spot an official insignia that clearly reads City of Chicago on the podium. This detail is reinforced by the fact that much of the actual filming took place in Chicago, Illinois, and the blank wheel motorcycle that Daryl uses to travel through the abandoned subway tunnels features authentic Illinois license plates. However, the Chicago identity becomes complicated when you notice that J5, Daryl's beloved washing machine robot, proudly wears a Detroit Tigers baseball cap throughout the entire film. This Detroit connection is further strengthened by Other Guy's costume, which incorporates a Michigan college sweater as part of his superhero outfit, clearly indicating some connection to the state of Michigan rather than Illinois. The original screenplay adds another layer to this geographic mystery, as it was initially set in New York City before the production moved to Chicago for filming. This means the movie went through at least 3 different city identities during its development process, creating a unique urban environment that borrows elements from multiple major American cities. The deliberate ambiguity serves the film's comic book aesthetic perfectly, creating a fictional metropolis that feels familiar yet impossible to pin down to any specific real-world location. This approach allows Blankman City to represent any struggling urban environment while avoiding the political and social complexities that might come with using an actual city's name and reputation. Fact 6. Handyman connection cover up. The character of Blankman has deep roots in one of Damon Wayans' most memorable creations from In Living Color, a disabled superhero character called Handyman, who became a fan favorite during the groundbreaking sketch comedy shows run from 1990 to 1994. When Wayans first pitched the idea for a superhero movie to Columbia Pictures, his original concept was to bring this popular television character directly to the big screen, creating a feature-length adventure that would expand on the comedic superhero stories that audiences already loved. Handyman was portrayed as a well-meaning but bumbling superhero who used a wheelchair and had various physical disabilities, yet remained determined to fight crime and help people despite the obvious challenges he faced. The character was both inspiring and hilarious, using his limitations as sources of both comedy and genuine heroism in ways that were groundbreaking for television at the time. However, when studio executives at Columbia Pictures reviewed the original concept, they became concerned about the potential controversy that might arise from making a full-length movie centered around a disabled superhero character. The early 1990s were a time when Hollywood was particularly sensitive about disability representation in mainstream entertainment, and the executives worried that critics and advocacy groups might view the character as making fun of people with disabilities, rather than celebrating their determination and heroism. Rather than abandon the project entirely, Wayans and the studio decided to rework the concept completely, transforming the disabled handyman into the nerdy but physically able Daryl Walker. This change allowed them to keep the core elements of an underdog superhero who uses homemade gadgets and unconventional methods to fight crime, while avoiding the potential public relations challenges that might have come with the original character. The connection between the two characters remains obvious to fans of In Living Color, as both heroes share similar personality traits, comedic timing, and the same actor bringing them to life. Fact 7. Last action hero, Crystal Ball. In one of the most bizarre examples of accidental movie promotion in Hollywood history, Damon Wayans appeared wearing a Blankman hat during a scene in the 1993 Arnold Schwarzenegger film Last Action Hero, creating an eerie prediction of his own future project that wouldn't hit theaters until the following year. This strange occurrence happened during the movie's premiere scene for the fictional Jack Slater 4 film, where various celebrities and attendees were shown arriving at the glamorous Hollywood event. The appearance was so brief and subtle that most viewers completely missed it during the film's theatrical run, but eagle-eyed fans and movie trivia enthusiasts eventually noticed this peculiar detail when examining the scene more carefully. What makes this moment particularly fascinating is that Blankman was still in development at Columbia Pictures when Last Action Hero was being filmed, meaning that the hat represented a project that existed only in script form and early planning stages. The timing of this appearance suggests that Wayans already had strong confidence in his superhero project and was perhaps doing some early promotional work, even though Blankman wouldn't begin actual production until September of 1993, months after Last Action Hero had already completed filming and been released. This means the hat appearance was either a remarkable coincidence or an incredibly early form of cross-promotion between two completely different studios and projects. The fact that Last Action Hero itself was a big-budget action movie that parodied Hollywood's obsession with over-the-top action films makes Wayans' cameo appearance even more appropriate, since both movies were essentially commenting on popular film genres in their own unique ways. This connection creates an unexpected link between Schwarzenegger's meta-action comedy and Wayans' low-budget superhero parody, two films that otherwise had absolutely nothing in common, except for this one strange moment of accidental prophecy. Fact 8. Hudlin Brothers Creative Control Battle. Before Mike Binder stepped in to direct Blankman, the project was originally supposed to be helmed by Reginald and Warrington Hudlin, two brothers who had already established themselves as rising talents in Hollywood with their critically acclaimed debut film House Party in 1990. In January of 1993, Columbia Pictures was actively negotiating with the Hudlin brothers to take on Damon Wayans' superhero comedy, with the studio initially planning to rush the production into theaters during the holiday season of that same year. The Hudlin brothers were considered an ideal choice for the project because of their proven ability to work with African-American comedic talent and their fresh perspective on popular entertainment genres. House Party had demonstrated their skill at creating commercially successful films that appealed to both mainstream audiences and specific cultural communities, making them seem like perfect candidates to bring Wayans' vision to life on the big screen. However, as negotiations continued throughout early 1993, significant creative differences began to emerge between the directors and Columbia Pictures executives. The specific details of these disagreements have never been made public, but the conflict ultimately centered around issues of creative control that proved impossible to resolve through compromise or further discussion. The Hudlin brothers made the difficult decision to walk away from the project entirely, rather than accept the studio's terms and restrictions on their artistic vision. This departure forced Columbia Pictures to completely restart the search for a new director, causing significant delays in the production timeline, and ultimately pushing the release date from the originally planned holiday season of 1993 to August of 1994. Mike Binder was eventually hired as the replacement director, and production finally began in September of 1993. The change in directors inevitably affected the final version of the film, as Binder brought his own comedic sensibilities and visual style to a project that had been conceived with completely different creative leadership in mind. Fact 9. Jason Alexander's shocking transformation. When Jason Alexander signed on to play the villainous Mr. Stone in Blankman, he made a dramatic physical commitment to the role that shocked audiences who knew him primarily as the lovably neurotic George Costanza on Seinfeld. Alexander decided to completely shave off all of his hair for the character, creating a bald, menacing appearance that was the complete opposite of his familiar television persona. This transformation was particularly striking because Alexander was simultaneously one of the most recognizable faces on American television in 1994, right in the middle of Seinfeld's incredibly successful run on NBC. Audiences were accustomed to seeing him with a full head of curly hair as the perpetually scheming and anxious George, making his completely bald appearance as the wheelchair-bound, corrupt news executive Mr. Stone almost unrecognizable at first glance. The physical change served the character perfectly, as Mr. Stone was designed to be a sleazy, manipulative media boss who would sell out anyone for a good story or personal gain. Alexander's bald head gave him a more sinister and corporate appearance that helped establish the character as a genuine threat rather than a comedic figure, even though he still maintained some of his natural comedic timing throughout the performance. What made this transformation even more remarkable was Alexander's willingness to completely alter his appearance for what was essentially a supporting role in a relatively low-budget comedy film. Most television stars at the height of their fame would be reluctant to make such a dramatic physical change, especially one that might affect their recognizability and marketability in other projects. The bald look was so effective and memorable that many viewers who saw Blankman specifically remembered being surprised by Alexander's appearance, with some initially not realizing it was the same actor they watched every week on one of television's most popular sitcoms. Fact 10. Arsenio Hall's hidden cameo. One of the most perplexing mysteries for viewers watching Blankman is the appearance of Arsenio Hall's name in the movie's credits, even though the famous talk show host seems to be completely absent from the actual film. The answer to this puzzle lies in a brief scene where Kevin Walker is shown watching television in his apartment, and the program he's viewing turns out to be a specially filmed fake episode of The Arsenio Hall Show. During the early 1990s, Arsenio Hall was one of the biggest names in late-night television, hosting his own syndicated talk show that ran from 1989 to 1994, and became famous for launching the careers of numerous comedians and musicians. His show was particularly important in the African-American entertainment community, making his involvement in Blankman a natural fit for the film's cultural context. For his cameo appearance, Hall filmed a complete mock episode of his talk show, specifically for the movie, featuring two completely ridiculous fictional superheroes named Gay Man and Midget Man as his guests. These characters were designed to be absurdly over-the-top parodies of superhero stereotypes, providing comic relief while also serving as a commentary on the ridiculous nature of costumed crime fighters in general. The scene serves multiple purposes within the film's narrative structure, as it shows Kevin consuming media about superheroes while his own brother is secretly becoming one in real life. The fake talk show episode also helps establish the movie's universe as one where superheroes are becoming a cultural phenomenon that extends beyond just Blankman's individual adventures. Many viewers have completely missed Hall's appearance because the scene is relatively brief and easy to overlook, leading to confusion when his name appears in the final credits. The cameo represents a clever way to include a major celebrity without requiring a significant time commitment or a major role in the main storyline. Fact 11. 12%, Rotten Tomatoes infamy. The critical reception for Blankman was so overwhelmingly negative that it earned one of the most disastrous scores in superhero movie history on Rotten Tomatoes, with only 12% of professional critics giving the film a positive review. This brutal assessment came from 17 different critics who reviewed the movie upon its release, with the average rating settling at a devastating 3.8 out of 10, placing it among the worst-reviewed major studio releases of 1994. To put this score in perspective, even notoriously bad superhero films from later decades typically manage to achieve higher critical ratings than Blankman. The 12% score places it in the company of some of cinema's most universally despised movies, making it a cautionary tale about how quickly a big-budget production can turn into a critical disaster when the execution fails to match the ambition. The harshness of the critical response was particularly striking because superhero comedies weren't entirely new territory in Hollywood, and Damon Wayans had already proven his comedic abilities through his work on In Living Color and other projects. Critics seemed to find fault with nearly every aspect of the production, from the writing and direction to the special effects and overall tone of the film. One of the few critics who offered even mild praise was Stephen Holden from the New York Times, who acknowledged that the film managed to get some comic mileage from its gadgets and Wayans' performance, while noting that it played things light and silly without completely collapsing into chaos. However, his relatively positive take was vastly outnumbered by reviewers who found little to recommend about the movie. The critical consensus seemed to be that Blankman failed to deliver on both the comedy and superhero elements that should have made it entertaining, creating a movie that satisfied neither fans of Wayans' comedy nor audiences looking for superhero action and adventure. Fact 12. Glass door continuity error. One of the most glaring production mistakes in Blankman occurs during the film's climactic sequence at the television station, where a glass door inexplicably shatters into pieces several seconds before J5, the robot actually makes any physical contact with it. This continuity error has become legendary among movie mistake enthusiasts and represents one of the most obvious editing failures in a major studio release from the 1990s. The mistake happens during the intense final confrontation scene where Blankman and other guy are rushing through the TV station to rescue Kimberly and stop the villain Michael Minnelli from carrying out his destructive plan. As J5 approaches the glass door that leads into the studio area, viewers can clearly see the door completely shatter and fall apart while the robot is still several feet away and hasn't even begun to make contact with the surface. What makes this error particularly noticeable is that the scene is supposed to showcase J5's strength and determination as he helps the heroes navigate through the building, but instead, it creates a moment that breaks the illusion and reminds viewers that they're watching a constructed movie set rather than a real adventure. The timing is so obviously wrong that it's impossible to miss once you know to look for it. This type of mistake typically occurs when multiple takes of a scene are filmed and then edited together incorrectly, or when special effects timing doesn't match up properly with the practical action happening on screen. In the case of Blankman, it appears that the glass breaking effect was triggered too early during the editing process, creating a moment where cause and effect happen in the wrong order. The error has been documented in various movie mistake databases and websites, where it's often cited as an example of how even major studio productions can sometimes miss obvious problems during the post-production process. Fact 13. Twisted Metal Easter Egg Revival. Nearly 3 decades after its disastrous theatrical release, Blankman experienced an unexpected moment of cultural rehabilitation when it appeared as a featured film in the Peacock streaming series Twisted Metal during 2023. In Episode 4 of the post-apocalyptic action series, the main characters John and Quiet take refuge in an abandoned movie theater while trying to escape from dangerous pursuers who are chasing them through the wasteland. The theater setting serves as a nostalgic time capsule filled with reminders of what going to the movies was like at the turn of the millennium, complete with vintage movie posters, including A Knight's Tale starring Heath Ledger. However, when John decides to put on a movie for entertainment, he specifically selects Blankman from the available options, enthusiastically calling it an absolute classic, despite its widely known reputation as a critical and commercial failure. This moment works perfectly within the context of Twisted Metal's narrative universe, which is set in a world where the apocalypse occurred in the early 2000s, freezing popular culture at a specific point in time that includes many forgotten movies and television shows from that era. The show's creators deliberately chose to include references to entertainment that might have been overlooked or dismissed by mainstream audiences, making Blankman an ideal candidate for this type of nostalgic Easter egg. The inclusion serves multiple purposes beyond simple nostalgia, as it reflects the way that supposedly bad movies often find new audiences and appreciation over time, especially when viewed through the lens of changing cultural perspectives. John's genuine enthusiasm for the film suggests that in the post-apocalyptic world of twisted metal, the standards for what constitutes quality entertainment have shifted considerably. This unexpected television appearance introduced Blankman to an entirely new generation of viewers who might never have encountered the film otherwise, proving that even the most critically maligned movies can find new life decades after their original release. Fact 14. McDonald's career change plot. In what may be the most unusual career transition in superhero movie history, Blankman features a subplot where Daryl Walker literally abandons his crime-fighting identity to take a regular job at McDonald's after his heroic efforts end in spectacular failure. This plot development occurs after a disastrous incident at the First City Bank where Blankman is unable to save Mayor Harris from a bomb explosion resulting in the politician's death and turning the once celebrated hero into a public pariah. The McDonald's employment represents a complete rejection of everything that made Daryl special or unique, as he trades his homemade gadgets and bulletproof costume for a standard fast food uniform and the mundane routine of taking orders and serving hamburgers. The film shows him working behind the counter in the familiar red and yellow McDonald's environment, completely stripped of any superhero identity or aspirations. This career change is particularly significant because it demonstrates how thoroughly Daryl has given up on both his heroic calling and his inventive nature, choosing instead to blend into the most anonymous and ordinary job possible. The McDonald's setting serves as the perfect symbol of corporate conformity and everyday mediocrity, representing everything that Blankman originally stood against when he decided to fight crime and help his community. Most superhero stories feature protagonists who might struggle with their dual identities or temporarily retire from heroic activities, but very few actually show the hero taking a completely ordinary service industry job as an alternative life path. This plot choice makes Blankman unique among superhero films for its willingness to explore what happens when a costumed crime fighter completely loses faith in their mission and chooses the most mundane possible alternative. The McDonald's job serves as the low point of Daryl's character arc, setting up his eventual return to heroism when circumstances force him back into the Blankman costume for the film's final confrontation. Fact 15. Cult video store renaissance. The story of Blankman didn't end with its catastrophic theatrical release, as the film experienced a remarkable second life through the home video market that transformed it from a forgotten flop into a genuine cult classic during the late 1990s. While the movie had earned less than $8 million during its brief run in theaters, it found an entirely different reception when it became available for rental at video stores across the country. The home video environment proved to be the perfect setting for audiences to discover and appreciate Blankman's unique brand of low-budget superhero comedy, without the pressure and expectations that come with paying for movie theater tickets. Families renting movies for weekend entertainment were more willing to take chances on unusual titles, and the film's goofy charm and heartfelt message about helping your community resonated much better in living rooms than it had in multiplexes. Video store customers began recommending the film to friends and family members, creating a word-of-mouth phenomenon that had been completely absent during the original theatrical release. The movie's silly humor and inventive gadgets made it particularly popular with younger viewers who weren't concerned with critical reviews or box office performance, and many people discovered that Blankman was genuinely entertaining when approached with the right expectations. This video store success was part of a larger trend during the 1990s, when many films that had failed theatrically found new audiences through home video rentals. The lower stakes of a rental decision allowed viewers to appreciate movies on their own terms, rather than judging them against blockbuster standards. The cult status that Blankman achieved through home video proved that theatrical box office numbers don't always tell the complete story of a film's cultural impact, and that sometimes movies need time and the right viewing environment to find their intended audience.